Dr. Mahoney.
Here.
Mayor Dardis.
Here.
Mr. Peterson.
I'm here.
Mayor Judd.
Here.
Mr. Hendrickson.
Here.
Mr. Pepcorn. Mr. Wetland.
Here.
Mr. Strand.
Here.
Mr. Campbell. Mrs. Shirling.
I'm here.
Mr. Steen.
Here.
Mr. Olson.
Here.
Ms. Carlson.
Here.
That is everyone. Quorum is present.
Should I have a motion to approve the minutes from the previous meeting?
Judd, so moved.
Is there a second?
Wayland,
Okay.
second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Motion carried. Is there a motion to approve the order of the agenda? And
Mr. Mayor?
okay, is there a second?
No, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
This is, sorry, this is Mary Shirling. I would like to make an addition to the agenda under 8B, land management, a recommendation to approve a purchase, or excuse me, a sale.
Okay, so I'll ask, is there a motion to approve the agenda with the additional item on land management, item B, a sale of a certain piece of land? Is there a motion?
Peterson, motion.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
Chad Peterson first and Shirley second. All those in favor say aye.
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 That passes. So we have consent agenda. You have financial report number 1 and voucher report approval number 2. I would take a motion for the consent agenda.
Strand, I so.
Moved and seconded. Roll call vote, please.
Dr. Mahoney.
Yes.
Mayor Dardis.
Yes.
Mr. Peterson.
Yes.
Mayor Judd.
Yes.
Mr. Hendrickson.
Yes.
Mr. Wayland.
Yes.
Mr. Strand.
Yes.
Mrs. Shirling.
Yes.
Mr. Steen.
Yes.
Mr. Olson.
Yes.
Ms. Carlson.
Yes.
That is everyone.
So we have the core project update. Terry Williams to report, please.
Good afternoon. This is Terry Williams, and I'm pleased to provide the Corps of Engineers monthly update. Number 1, an update on the diversion inlet structure. The concrete approach and structure slabs are complete, and placement of the downstream step slab is scheduled to begin next week. And when the drone footage is running, you can see that that's being formed up and the rebar is being placed. We're about 24% complete, and the required completion date remains in June of 2023. On to number 2, which is the Wild Rice River structure. Concrete placement for the dam wall footings and control structure slab is scheduled to begin next week as well. So lots of concrete being placed next week at both sites. And the latest drone footage shows that the stabilization slabs are being placed, which serves as kind of a working surface for future concrete placements of the footings and slabs. We're about 10% complete at the Wild Rice, and the required completion date remains 22 October of 23. The Red River structure, this is our critical path feature for the federal work, and the design remains on schedule, which really happy about. The 65% review by the sponsors began this week, and we still are on track to have final plans and specs in September of 21. Southern Embankment Reach SC1, that's western tieback. We're in the home stretch on the design of this one. We're in the final reviews, and we've got final design plans and specs scheduled to be done the end of this month. And we'll be able to put a contract out for construction of that, put it out for bids as soon as we have permits and the lands are all acquired. Number 5, Reach SC2A, that's part of the camel hump, the dam. The detailed design remains on schedule there as well, and we've got the 65% review scheduled to start about late January on that one. Number 6, I-29 Rays. The final reviews are ongoing on that one as well, and we're scheduled to have the final plans and specs available late November. And on the 21st of September, we requested permission from federal court to construct this, and we will start the contracting process once permission is granted by the judge. On to number 7, Drain 27 Wetland Mitigation. The 65% review began on 28 September, and we completed the environmental assessment in September, and we will award a construction contract hopefully the end of this fiscal year in September. With that, is there any questions?
Any questions of the group? See no hands up. Thank you, Terry.
You're welcome.
Joel, are you ready? Executive Director report.
Yes, Mr. Chair, members of the board. So as you noticed, we've gone virtual, and we'll have virtual meetings through the end of the year, in part somewhat due to COVID, but also due to some scheduling constraints with Fargo City Hall. So I appreciate everybody being flexible and switching over to a virtual environment here for the next few months. I'll go over a few things that happened over the course of the last month. We had some great success stories here. The first one is the North Dakota State Water Commission agreements. You'll notice in your packet this month there were 2 North Dakota Water Commission agreements, and they'll be recommended for approval under the Finance 9A on your agenda. I'll just kind of give a little update. Those 2 agreements are basically rescinding our prior agreements and moving our existing funds around at the state. With this action, however, it does remove the 10% professional services fee cap on those dollars. And so essentially we'll be able to submit for a reimbursement of $30 million of expenditures that have already occurred since 2017. And so that'll help to reduce our carryover amount. I believe we have somewhere around 84 million sitting with the state right now. We'll be able to reduce that down to around 50 million. Another significant action that occurred, I attended the State Water Commission meeting here in October, and we had a cost share agreement in front of the State Water Commission for an additional $44 million. And so that was approved. I'm happy to report. And that cost share agreement should be coming before the board, hopefully in the next few months, so we can execute that. And we'll have an additional $44 million at the state that we'll be able to use for reimbursements. The second item to note here, I did make an offer for a communications director position. I'm happy to report that the finalist accepted the offer. Her name is Jennifer Darling, and she'll be starting on November 1st. And so we're very happy and pleased to be welcoming her on board. Certainly have her available for the next board meeting so she can introduce herself, and we can talk about some changes and where we're going with the communications program with the Diversion Authority. Another item, we continue to work with the P3 teams. We have one-on-one meetings coming up here in the next week to start going over and preparing for the Draft 6 RFP. So we are continuing to keep our schedule with the P3 procurement and anticipate financial proposals in mid-March. We also, I wanted to make a note, I did deliver the 2021 draft cash budget to the Finance Committee last month for review. The reason it's not in your board packet today is I would like to have a couple more months to process some property transactions. We have about 50 million in appraisals right now in negotiation, and the timing of when those transactions occur, whether it be in 2020 or 2021, would significantly change our potential 2021 cash budget. And so I did present this to the Finance Committee yesterday, and the Finance Committee did make a motion to direct me to provide the final cash budget no later than December of this year. And so we would expect to see that at our December meeting for approval. In the last item here, I have a survey that will be going out to all the board members and discussing electronic devices for use for the diversion board. So the thought here is we'd like to be able to provide the board packets and everything electronically on a device for each of the board members. So I'd like to get some feedback from the board on that. I believe the email will be coming from Miss Peggy Harder. So keep an eye out for that. And I'll stand for any questions that the board might have.
Any questions from board members? Thanks, Joel. We'll go to John Shockley. He's got a couple of updates for us today. Dakota Carrier Network. John?
Yeah, this is an action item, Mr. Chair. This has been recommended for approval by the Finance Committee. Just briefly, this is one of many P3 MOUs regarding the relocation of utilities. Just briefly, what happens is as part of planning out the construction of the P3 channel, we have to negotiate MOUs with each of the utilities along the channel to cover issues of relocation, reimbursement, and coordination with the P3 contractor. The costs of these contracts aren't necessarily concluded within the contract because it becomes part of the bid of the P3 because they'll P3 contractor because they will be performing all the work. That said, they need to know what the specifics of the work that they'll be performing, scope, time, duration, and coordination with the utility carrier. And so the board will see increasing numbers of these MOUs coming across for approval. I can certainly answer any questions you may have. If there are board members who have very detailed, specific questions, myself or somebody from the technical side are certainly available to answer those questions offline. But I can stand for any questions if any board members have questions. But once again, it was approved or recommended for approval by the Finance Committee yesterday.
Any questions by any of the parties? If not, I'd stand for a motion.
This is Chuck.
Peterson
I'll
motion.
move. I'll second it.
Or
It's
second.
Chuck. Either or.
You get that, Don?
Yep. Chuck and
Roll call vote, please.
Dr. Mahoney,
Aye.
Mayor Dardis,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mayor Judd,
Yes.
Mr. Hendrickson,
Yes.
Mr. Wayland,
Yes.
Mr. Strand,
Yes.
Mrs. Shirley,
Yes.
Mr. Steen,
Yes.
Mr. Olson,
Yes.
Ms. Carlson.
Yes.
That is everyone.
Very good. John, you gonna do a WIFI update, please?
Just briefly, we are still waiting for the term sheet to come from WIFIA. They had said it was supposed to be out last week, but we're still waiting. I had contacted WIFIA today just to see where they were at with the term sheet, and I haven't heard back yet today. But as soon as I do hear back with the term sheet, I will update the leadership, and especially the leadership on the Finance Committee.
Still looking good, and you had an interest rate at 2.125 or something like that, John?
Yeah, right now that's what the interest rate would be if we locked in. So just waiting on that term sheet to come out.
Very good. Any questions, Mr. Shockley? We'll move on then. Public outreach, Roger Olson and Rocky Schneider. I think Rocky's going to take it. Is that right, Roger?
Yeah, that's right, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This is Rocky Schneider with AE2S. Going to show on the screen here the major outreach update over the last month, and it's probably the biggest land acquisition update too, is we did a very large CLOMER mailing. So a CLOMER, if you remember, is the conditional letter of map revision that we received from FEMA in early September. And that was sent out to all impacted property owners. So it went out to about 360 property owners upstream that are impacted by the project. And so they're in one of the 4 mitigation zones. And in addition to a letter, they received an individual map of their property and showing exactly how they're impacted and exactly how the next steps for mitigation are. The other big thing in the letter was that they were each assigned a land agent. So now every property owner who's impacted has an individual that's responsible for communications with their property. And so we've been waiting for this step for a long time, and we think it's a really major step. We did take 2 other steps with the Clomer approval. There was a letter sent from Joel to all the local government units. I believe there were 14 of them. And so all the townships and cities in that upstream area with an offer or a request to meet with them at an upcoming meeting. I believe Joel has done a couple of those and been really positive, and it's good to open up those communications with those government units. One other letter going out this week is, we call it the non-impacted letter. We know that whenever we do something like this, neighbors talk, and there's a lot of interest from the wider community in that upstream area about what's going on. So we sent maybe a briefer letter to them, letting them know where they can find information about the major changes to the project. And so we were excited for that. One other update, just to be brief today, is we were going to show a video of the inlet structure that was flown on Monday. So we flew them, both the inlet structure and the Wild Rice River control structure on Monday this week. And Terry Williams was going to talk over the narration. And Tammy, can you share that video? She was also going to share a slide, so I'm wondering if we lost that.
Looks like you got it.
Okay.
All right, so we're starting from basically the upstream side of the diversion inlet structure. The flow of the water will be going towards the northwest as shown on the top of the screen. So we're looking directly at the diversion inlet structure right now and the direction that the water would flow through it. The approach channel is labeled there, and the dam embankments are labeled as well. The site of the future diversion channel is marked right downstream of the structure. That's where the stilling basin is going to be. So now we're looking at it from the other direction. You're looking at what we call the right dam walls. That's the right side if you're looking on the downstream direction. So you can see that the footings of most of the walls have been poured. And they'll start pouring the actual right dam walls probably next week, I believe. And then this is the gated structure itself where the 3 50-foot gates are going to sit. And you can see that the control structure slab where the 3 gates will sit have been poured, and the upstream approach slabs have been poured. And you can see that they're forming the downstream stepped slabs. And that's the big one that's going to be poured next week. And these are what we call the left dam walls. The footings are basically done and the walls are poured, and you can see the stamped, or not the stamped, but the formed concrete pattern on the walls where the forms have been stripped. It's kind of a really nice brick pattern. Once some of the concrete is cured in those steps, they'll start driving pile in what we call the stilling basin area. So the pile equipment will move over and start where you can see the nice flat stilling basin area that's been all prepped and ready to go. And it's also outlined by the sheet pile, which prevents movement of the foundation materials through that area. So really exciting. By the end of this season, all of the vertical concrete basically should be poured with the exception of the piers and abutments where the gates will sit.
Thank you,
Hey,
Terry.
Mayor, this is Mayor, this
Go
is
ahead.
Rocky again. Just one last thing on that item. I know last month there was a lot of interest in doing a tour of the structures for the board members. We were working toward that end, but with the change in COVID protocols, we are probably not going to do a bus tour right now, and so we're looking at another self-guided option.
Very good. Next, we go to land management, Mary Shirley. Mary, are you ready? You're muted.
I'm sorry. I was just saying that was a tough act to follow. But that being said, we continue to make steady progress with land acquisition. 6 parcels were acquired since our last meeting. We focus on the Diversion Channel, the Southern Embankment Reach 1, and the I-29 roadways. Appraisals are being conducted for Drain 27 wetland and the Red River control structure. And the Cass County Commission has held 4 public meetings with several different property owners and authorized the Cass County Joint Water Resource District to utilize last resort eminent domain. As Rocky mentioned, there's been considerable public outreach post-Clomar. The Corps surveyors have completed the environmental monitoring for 2020, and scoping for phase 2 study with Crown appraisals for the flowage easement valuations is being conducted. And we've also received the preliminary phase 2 report from Watson Associates for the crop insurance development. And that all is in your packet. And that concludes that portion of my report. Any questions?
Any question, any members? And those are in their packets or electronically, we can look at them.
Yes, they are.
So let's go on to this acquisition property you want to go to.
Yes, thank you. I believe Peggy has got the information to share. We've done this in the past when we've had excess property that we weren't quite sure what we were going to need to do, and now we know that we are not going to need this. This is on the fringe, and so we would request permission for the Joint Water Board to go ahead and engage an auction for this property. So Peggy, do you want to make the presentation on where this property is?
Can you see my screen currently?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
And Mary, you estimate this property is worth about $1 million?
I don't have that estimate with me. Peggy, were you going to make a brief comment on this, or was Joel? I know Eric's not with us today.
Yep. So it was just my understanding that when this property was acquired, and Eric didn't provide yesterday really kind of an estimate of what the worth was, but it was uncertain at the time if the actual horse barn would be impacted. Now, with the approval of the Clomar, we have determined that the horse barn and the adjacent lots, as shown on the map, will not be impacted. And that's basically the information I got from Eric at this point. And so looking at putting those up for auction, with the actual ask being today for approval from the board, recommendation came from the land committee yesterday to go ahead and put the horse barn in the adjacent lots that are no longer needed up for auction. Eric did provide some additional information at the land committee yesterday that this property was a willing seller, and actually had come to the board about it a few times. And just at that time, we weren't sure at the reach of the impacts until we had a completed and approved Clomar.
Yeah, he mentioned it is probably $1 million. So do I have a motion to put this up for sale, please?
I would so move.
Is there a second?
Judd, second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Dr. Mahoney,
Yes.
Mayor Dardis,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mayor Judd, Mayor Judd,
Sorry, having a dog issue. Yes.
Mr. Hendrickson,
Yes.
Mr. Wayland,
Yes.
Mr. Strand,
Yes.
Mrs. Shirley,
Yes.
Mr. Steen,
Yes.
Mr. Olson,
Yes.
Ms. Carlson.
Yes.
That is everyone.
Very good. Anything else, Mary Shirley?
No, that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. On finance, we have Mayor Dardis to report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yesterday, the Finance Committee met. As reported by Mr. Shockley, the memorandum of understanding with regard to the utilities of Dakota Carrier Network were discussed. Mr. Paulson discussed with us the State Water Commission agreements for cost share reimbursement. And on behalf of the Finance Committee, we would like to express our good wishes to what they did. Their work with the State Water Commission of removing the 10% cap for professional services, as well as the $44 million, is obviously a very, very positive thing for the Diversion Authority. So good work by that team of people that were involved in that. Also, as Mr. Paulson indicated, there was also a discussion about the cash budget for 2021. And we did vote to extend that to December, by December 31st of 2020. I'd stand for any questions, Mr. Mayor. Excuse me, there was one more item. There was a Houston Moore Group amendment for some additional expenditure. I believe the dollars were $255,000. And that is for an ongoing engineering issue that we have with one of the downtown Fargo lift stations and the outfall and some settling. So that concludes my report. I certainly stand for any questions. Thank you.
Any question, Mayor Dardis? Can I have a motion that covers both items, please?
Mr. Chairman, I would move so. Dardis?
Is there a second? Moved in second. Any questions, Mayor Dardis? If not, roll call vote, please.
Dr. Mahoney,
Yes.
Mayor Dardis,
Yes.
Mr. Peterson,
Yes.
Mayor Judd,
Yes.
Mr. Hendrickson,
Yes.
Mr. Wayland,
Yes.
Mr. Strand. Mr. Strand? Mrs. Shirley?
I was logged off and just logged in. Is that a vote?
Yes, John, you just have to vote on
Yes.
the Finance Committee's reports. There are two of
Yeah.
them. We need motion
Yes.
to pass both of them.
Mrs. Shirley?
Yes.
Mr. Steen?
Yes.
Mr. Olson?
Yes.
Ms. Carlson?
Yes.
That is everyone.
Good. Just before we go into executive session, Commissioner Pipcorn is going to join us in executive session. He did not get on at the early part of this meeting, so we will have him join us during our executive session. Can I have a motion in regards to executive session, please?
I so move. Strand?
Is there a second?
Second, Carlson.
Peterson, second.
Mr. Shockley, should we read this off before we go into session, or is it public?
The agenda is public as long as the maker of the motion and the seconder are in agreement that that was their motion to go into executive session pursuant to what's on the agenda.
Okay. Roll call vote, please.
Dr. Mahoney?
Yes.
Mayor Dardis?
Yes.
Mr. Peterson?
Yes.
Mayor Judd?
Yes.
Mr. Hendrickson?
Yes.
Mr. Wayland?
Yes.
Mr. Strand?
Yes.
Mrs. Shirley?
Yes.
Mr. Steen?
Yes.
Mr. Olson?
Yes.
Ms. Carlson?
Yes.
That is everyone.
Well, if any of you have any questions how to get to the next link, Don will stay on this particular thing to get us on there, but we'll reconvene in 5 minutes when we all get to the new site, please. Thank you.
And Mr. Chair, we may have action coming out of the executive session, so we may need to log back on to this meeting afterwards.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Yep. Yes.
Mayor Dardis. Mr. Peterson,
I'm here.
Mayor Judd,
Here.
Mr. Hendrickson,
Present.
Mr. Pepcorn,
Here.
Mr. Wayland,
Here.
Mr. Strand,
I'm here.
Mrs. Shirley,
I'm here.
Mr. Steen,
Here.
Mr. Olson,
Here.
Ms. Carlson,
Yes.
and is Mayor Dardis back on?
Yes.
That is everyone.
Very good. We're back in session. I think Commissioner Strand wants to make a motion. John, could you explain what the motion would be right now, please? John Shockley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The motion would be a motion to authorize the executive director and the chair of the Diversion Authority to finalize the negotiations of a binding term binding terms sheet consistent with the parameters that were outlined in the executive session, and to give them the authorization to do that with any minor changes that they deem necessary.
Commissioner Strand,
Mr. Chairman, I make that recommended motion.
is there a second?
Steen will second.
Any discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Dr. Mahoney,
Aye.
Mayor Dardis,
No.
Mr. Peterson,
No.
Mayor Judd,
Aye.
Mr. Hendrickson,
Yes.
Mr. Pepcorn,
Aye.
Mr. Wayland,
Yes.
Mr. Strand,
Yes.
Mrs. Shirley,
Yes.
Mr. Steen,
Yes.
Mr. Olson,
Yes.
Ms. Carlson.
Yes.
That is everyone.
Thank you, everyone, for making the meeting today, and thank you for the passing of this motion. I will have us adjourn at this time. Thank you.
Thank you.